This is Gene Krebs, and on behalf of the Center for Community Solutions, we're high in Ohio. We're going around the state, we're talking to people who know how things work and are able actually to make things work in some cases, which is the thing about being a representative. You know how to make things work, and I'm joined here today by Representative Terry Boose out of Huron County. The thing that strikes me is we're sitting here today, we're talking about your work, very admirable work for establishing an evaluative process, an audit, if you will, of the various tax credits, tax giveaways, tax loopholes, whatever you want to call them around Ohio. And you're asking legitimate questions. Some of these go back to 1919, and isn't about 90 years long enough to take a look at some of these things? And Ohio may have changed slightly since then. One of the things in our discussions here, we're talking about this, it reminds me of return on investment. And there's only one tax credit in Ohio at this point in time I'm aware of that has a return on investment. That's the state historic tax credit for rehabilitation.
That's right.
And that's one that I, full disclosure, had a, shall we say, a not insignificant role in. And that's why I put that language in there. With the cooperation, I'm very insistent upon it because you look around the other states, eventually if the tax credit is worthy, eventually folks start to beat up on it and still, or the green eye shades over at taxation say, well, we really want that, need the money. So they eventually, it loses. And here it's had a 4-to-1, 5-to-1 impact. It's had a very good return on investment, and so we've been able to maintain that. But for a whole lot of them, what you've described to me a little bit of a process you've talked about with an every other year, take a look at some of these things. Florida has a not dissimilar process, I think, doesn't it?
Right, yes it does. And I think more and more states are looking at this. I think Oklahoma also just went through the process.
Really?
And, yeah, I talked to them a little bit about it. And they said...
but they have no income tax, I think.
Well, but they're looking at all taxes. They're looking at all their taxes and seeing whether there's tax credits and saying, are there things that we need to be changing? We look at all... We're going to look at more than income tax, I think, eventually, too, and look at everything as to whether just our tax policy is working, is what Oklahoma's doing. And when I told them I was looking into this bill, they said, excellent bill, good luck.
Why? Why good luck?
Because everybody's always going to defend their tax expenditure, their tax credit, their loophole. They're always going to say, but they may only say, well, we've always had it, so why can't we continue to have it? If it's been good for 90 years, why isn't it good today? Or what are you going to do for me if you take this away from me? Or there's no way my industry can accept this.
Yeah.
And what I'm telling them is, that may be true, but let's open it up for discussion. Let's find out, what really the bill was about, and is it doing what it's supposed to be doing?
You see, here's the thing. I will flat out tell you that as far as the state historic tax credit for rehabilitation, take a good hard look at that. It has, my gosh, now almost a decade. Now, Representative Kirk Schering was very active in drafting that, as long was then chair of the House Finance Committee, Chuck Calvert. And this return on investment built into the language of the bill. Let me give you something to think about, is that on every single tax credit comes forward, and this is the thing I see, is that so often members want to solve a problem, aren't really sure what to do, so they offer a tax credit for it.
Right.
Offer this as an amendment to it, that you will do a sunset and do an audit. Maybe if you can't, maybe eat the apple one bite at a time. But what you're talking about here with your problem, this reminds me of my favorite quote by a guy named Machiavelli. And it just hit me sitting here, and I just happen to have it sitting here in front of me. This is what is at the bottom of all my emails, part of my signatures. It says, it ought to be remembered that there is nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, and more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in introducing a new order of things, because the innovator has for enemies all those who have done well under the old conditions, and lukewarm defenders and those who may do well under the new. This coolness arises partly from fear of the opponents, who have the laws on their side, and partly from the incredulity of men who do not readily believe in new things until they have had a long experience of them. And he wrote that 500 years ago. It still sums up perfectly the situation you're going through here.
And I think you can even add a little bit more to it now with term limits, because
Oh,
now with
yes.
term limits, if we're gone after 8 years, a lot of people don't even know what that bill was about, what it was started for. No one even knows it's there, and that's why the need for the sunset
Yeah,
and
the review.
also the audit and review. I agree with you. You know, it even compounds it more so than somebody who is so bright that many years ago to know that that was a problem.
Yeah.
And it's, I think it's maybe just compounded even a little bit more.